You can create a brilliant magic system, but if you screw up the character dynamics, your urban fantasy novel is going to flop. Readers in this genre have a very specific expectation from how the reluctant hero refuses the call to how the slow burn romance actually burns. Merry Christmas, everybody. My name is Jason. I'm a fantasy author and a massive nerd for narrative structure. And this week we're doing something a little different. This is going to be the first of 3 videos going into depth on a specific genre, in this case, urban fantasy. If all goes well, I might be able to make a lot more videos like this on very specific genres throughout all of Amazon. So let me know in the comments if you have a particular genre you'd like me to cover. Now, I didn't want to just guess what works, so I conducted a massive analysis of the top performing books in urban fantasy, specifically standard urban fantasy, because there are a number of variations. And I used a mixture of AI and my own manual review to break down the bestsellers that have proven themselves in the market. And today I'm sharing the specific tropes that separate the 1-star reviews from the 5-star favorites. First is the Masquerade. If you're writing urban fantasy, you need to start with the Masquerade, and this isn't optional. This is a defining line that separates this genre from a story that just happens to include wizards. It creates the tension between the boring, mundane world your reader lives in and the thrilling, supernatural world that you are inventing. Readers want to look out their window at a dark alley and wonder if a vampire is stalking prey there unseen by human eyes. But if everyone in your book knows about magic, you lose that tension immediately and you lose the mystery. So you have to decide exactly how the secret is kept. Is it fear-based? Maybe the supernatural beings hide because they are terrified of what humans would do if they found out. Or maybe it's passive. Magic might just naturally hide itself, scrambling the brains of anyone who isn't initiated. You could also go the Men in Black route and have a specific organization dedicated to wiping memories and destroying evidence. Whatever you pick, you have to address the elephant in the room: technology. It was easy to hide a werewolf in the 1980s, but today every person on the street has a 4K camera in their pocket connected to the internet. Does magic scramble digital sensors? Does the government scrub YouTube videos of spellcasting? You have to answer this. And if you don't, the reader is going to check out because their suspension of disbelief will snap. So pick a system, stick to the rules, and make the reader believe that this could be real. The next trope is the reluctant hero. So once you have the world, you need someone to live in it. And that's where we get the reluctant hero. This trope works because it provides the most honest reaction to finding out monsters are real. If you discovered a werewolf was eating people in your neighborhood, you wouldn't grab a kitchen knife and run outside. You would probably just lock your doors and look for an apartment in a different city. And this is why this protagonist works. They are the avatar for the reader. They don't choose heroism, they are kind of forced into it. But where I see authors get this wrong is making the reluctance superficial. They make the character just kind of shy, and that isn't enough. The reluctance needs to come from a valid internal struggle. Maybe they want to protect their family and getting involved puts them at risk. Maybe they just need to pay rent and fighting demons doesn't pay the bills. Now let the practical concerns of real life compete with the magical crisis. Have them try to delegate the responsibility. Have them pack a bag to leave town. Then hit them with the catalyst, the moment where inaction becomes impossible. And even then, let them fight while resenting the fight. When a character who desperately wants safety chooses danger, that's when you have a story. The next trope is hidden heritage. Often that hero discovers they aren't just an overworked barista, they have something more. This is the hidden heritage trope. It validates the secret hope that we all have that we are special. But be careful, it is incredibly easy to make this feel cheap. You can't just have your character wake up with laser eyes on a Tuesday for no reason. You need to know the mechanism of discovery. Is it biological? Did they touch a cursed object? Or was it a traumatic trigger? And you need to know the logic behind the secret. Why was it hidden? Was their grandmother holding back their powers to protect them? Was their memory wiped? The most important part isn't the power itself, it's more the cost. Gaining power usually means losing normalcy. And once your protagonist unlocks this part of themselves, they are forced to lie to their friends. They have to navigate the politics of a magical society they didn't even know existed 5 minutes ago. So don't treat it as a power-up, treat it as a burden. This leads to the grandfather of all tropes, the chosen one. And in high fantasy, being chosen is often an honor. In the modern world, it's a massive inconvenience. Your protagonist just wants to live a normal life, and a prophecy ruins that. The conflict shouldn't be about fulfilling the prophecy, it should be about resisting it. But do not use the prophecy as plot armor that guarantees a win. The stakes evaporate if the reader knows the hero is destined to succeed, and instead, make the destiny a target on their back. Make it cost them something, their relationships, their safety, or a piece of their soul. Modern audience love agency. Rather than an immutable fate that forces the character down a track, make the destiny a choice. The prophecy opens the doors, but the character has to walk through it. When they accept the responsibility despite the heavy cost, you have a hero worth rooting for. To get that hero moving, you need a MacGuffin, and this is the engine that drives the car. It doesn't really matter if it's a ring, a sword, or a flash drive. It only matters that everybody wants it desperately. In urban fantasy, this acts as a kind of magnet. It forces the vampires, the wizards, and the police into the same room. Don't just stick a magic object in the story and give them something to do. Connect it to emotional stakes. If the hero is looking for a sword, for example, it should be the only thing that can protect their sister. Link the object to the character's internal desires and give it history. Urban fantasy readers love lore, so referencing ancient treaties or dead sorcerers makes the world feel real. Next, we have magic with costs. If your protagonist can wave a wand and solve every problem without breaking a sweat, you don't really have a story, you have a cheat code. Readers need to know that using magic is a calculated risk. So establish a specific economy. Is there a physical toll? Does casting a spell cause bleeding or exhaustion? Is there a mental strain that erodes their sanity? Or does it require resources like rare components? Whatever you pick, stay consistent. If the tank is empty in chapter 1, don't let them just throw fireballs like confetti in the climax just because it looks cool. Real costs force the character to make a moral choice. Is casting the spell worth the physical damage? Is saving the city worth losing a memory? When you force your characters to weigh the magical solution against a heavy cost, you create genuine tension. Now we get the trope called fish out of water, and this typically goes hand in hand with the Masquerade and the magic system. The fish out of water trope places a character in an environment where their nature clashes with their surroundings. You can have the human thrust into the magical underground or the ancient supernatural being trying to navigate the modern world. So think of a fae trying to use an Uber or a vampire confused by Instagram. It's funny, but don't stop at the comedy. The true power here is disorientation. A human misunderstanding magical etiquette shouldn't just be awkward, it should be dangerous. It could start a war. The best use of this trope is to flip the script, transform the character's displacement into their greatest asset. Because they are an outsider, they see solutions the locals overlook. A human might ask a logical question about a blood feud that no one else dared to ask. And you don't have to have them fully assimilate by the end. Keep that friction, it makes them distinct. Next is found family. And if there's one trope that makes readers in this genre feel warm and fuzzy, it's the found family. These characters are usually outcasts, refugees from supernatural hierarchies, or humans who know too much. They don't fit into the mundane world or the magical one, so they kind of just find each other. The big mistake I see is introducing everyone at once. So don't dump 5 new characters on your reader in chapter 3. Build the team organically, introduce them through necessity, and maybe your protagonist needs a hacker, then later needs a healer. The why matters here. It shouldn't be because they all just like each other. The best crews form out of survival. They are forced together by a massive threat, and this creates friction. When you have a vampire who belongs to a coven and a werewolf who answers to the pack, you force them to choose between their biological family and their chosen family, and that choice is a goldmine for conflict. Use the shared trauma of saving the world to glue them together. Next, we get some buddy cop dynamics. This often leads you take 2 people who have no business working together and handcuff them to the same case. This works because contrast creates conflict. In urban fantasy, this is about worldview. One represents the streets and the law, the other represents magic and chaos. Don't make the human useless, they should be hyper competent in their own lane, and the wizard kills the demon, the cop gets the warrant, etc. Keep the thorns, resist the urge to have them hold hands by chapter 5, bind them legally or magically so they can't walk away, and then let them argue over methods. The friction reveals great character depth. The next one is enemies to lovers. If you want to take that friction and add romance, you get the genre favorite enemies to allies to lovers. This mirrors the high stakes of the world. Shallow dating doesn't cut it when the apocalypse is coming. You need a connection forged in fire. But please do not make the enemy abusive. The animosity should be ideological, not toxic. Maybe they belong to warring factions or have different views on justice. They should respect each other's skills even if they hate their goals. Structure the progression. Hatred, grudging recognition, forced alliance, and finally romantic awareness. And remember, slow burn does not mean slow pacing. Do not stop the plot for googly eyes. Generally, the romance should be a subplot running parallel to the action, because remember, this is standard urban fantasy, not paranormal romance, which is a separate genre. Layer small moments of intimacy throughout the danger so that the final kiss feels inevitable. The next trope is the ticking clock. To keep that hero moving against the villain, you need a ticking clock. If your plot is dragging, you are probably missing a deadline. Urgency sharpens decision-making. When a character has a month, they can be rational. When they have until sunset before the virus becomes permanent, they have to take risks. So don't make the deadline arbitrary. Ground it in the mechanics of the world. Maybe a ritual requires specific star alignment, or a poison moves at a certain speed. And keep the clock visible. Show the moon rising. Show the corruption spreading. This is great for inter-world friction. If the hero has to stop a demon by 5 p.m. but has a job interview at 4:30, you have immediate relatable conflict. Most authors treat the plot like a straight line, but urban fantasy needs interwoven mysteries. And that's where this next trope comes in, known as mystery threads. You have the mundane reality and the supernatural underbelly, so the mystery needs to exist on both levels. Use causality. Revelation in thread A should trigger an escalation in thread B, and if the hero finds a mundane clue, it forces a magical question. If they upset a vampire in the political thread, it hinders the murder investigation. Don't let subplots exist in isolation. Every thread must matter to the protagonist's ultimate goal. When you get to the climax, you want all of these threads to converge on a single point in time. The political conspiracy solves the murder, which reveals the hero's power. And then the next trope is called sanctuary. Sometimes the characters need a break, or rather a different kind of stress. That brings us to the sanctuary, and this is a neutral ground, the nightclub owned by an ancient party, or the council hall. Do not treat this as a timeout. It's a tension magnifier. The most intense scenes isn't always a sword fight. It's forcing the hero to sit at a table across from the villain because the rules say they can't fight. The conflict becomes psychological and political. You need enforcement. A rule without consequences is just a suggestion. Establish why no one breaks the rules. Is the owner a dragon, for example? Is there an enchantment that strips magic? Because when the safety of the sanctuary is finally violated, that is where the end game begins. In our next trope, if a fight does break out, maybe the hero uses a sentient weapon. This is the bridge between the modern and the ancient. Think Excalibur in a pawn shop, but don't treat it like a GPS with attitude. It needs agency. Like a bad roommate you carry in a holster, it should cause problems. Design the personality to foil the protagonist, and if the hero is cautious, make the sword bloodthirsty. Establish a motivation. Was it forged to kill a specific bloodline? If that goal conflicts with the hero's current objective, you have gold. And apply costs. Does it drain the hero's life? Does it attract predators? Using the weapon should be a desperate choice, not a default setting. The next common trope is memory loss. Sometimes to hide the truth, we use memory loss. It gets a bad rap, but in urban fantasy, it helps with the Masquerade. If the protagonist forgets the rules, they become the avatar for the reader, asking basic questions about ghouls and magical laws. But avoid random head bumps. Tie the amnesia to the magic system. Was it a curse, a government wipe, a trade with the Fae? The cause determines the cure. And don't use a magic switch to restore everything at once. Map out a progressive recovery with flashbacks and false memories. A warrior who remembers how to fight but not why they fight has to rediscover their morality. It turns the recovery into character development. Finally, we have to talk about how you deliver all this. If you pick up 10 bestsellers in this genre, about 8 of them are probably written in first-person past tense. This is because of the scope. Epic fantasy needs a bird's eye view of armies. Urban fantasy is about one person navigating a secret world. And so first person is all about voice. The narrator's personality filters every piece of information. So you aren't just describing a vampire, you're actually describing how much the protagonist hates that vampire. And so this allows for the unreliable narrator. Maybe the hero is wrong about how magic works, that kind of thing. Also, if you're writing this genre, you are likely writing a series. But don't confuse a cliffhanger with an unfinished story. You must resolve the main conflict of the current book, and if the hero is hunting a demon, they must catch that demon. Master the unresolved subplot. While the battle ends, the war escalates. Think of the Marvel post-credits scenes. The hero wins, but we see the enemy making a phone call. This is the stinger. It promises that safety is only temporary. Now, I know that's a lot of moving parts, but if you nail the dynamics of the Masquerade, the specific type of reluctant hero, and the rules of your magic system, you are well on your way to writing a book that readers won't be able to put down. If you're serious about writing urban fantasy. I've actually published a book that goes into much more depth on the standard urban fantasy genre. You can buy that book, but you can also get it at no extra charge along with many other books of other genre analyses by joining the Story Hacker Gold group, which by the way is open right now, but only for the next week and will be going up. The price will be going up at the end of that week. So if you want to get in, now's the time to do it before the end of the year. I will include a link in the description down below, and I will see you in the next video.